The Deer Farming Channel is brought to you in part by Record Rack Deer and Elk Feeds. As a deer hunter, I want to know all I can about America's favorite big game animal. That's why I became a deer farmer. Without deer farms, we lose our greatest resource for research and whitetail management. With them, we gain more knowledge than ever before. Join me as we discover the truth about whitetails and meet those who work every day to preserve this great species for future generations. My name is Keith Warren, and this is Deer and Wildlife Stories. Welcome to the beautiful rolling hills of eastern Ohio, everybody. It is early August, and we've had a bunch of rain, and I mean the whitetail deer here are absolutely fat and happy. Today, we're at Dakota Whitetails, and we're going to show you some giant whitetail bucks. This is one of the biggest sleepers in the deer farming industry. You're not going to believe this place. One of the best things about my job is being able to travel around the country and be able to bring you stories from different deer farms and show you some beautiful deer, but also introduce you to some people that have giant hearts. They love the whitetail deer as much as we do.
Hi, I'm Jim Moses. I have a deer farm in Quaker City, Ohio. I spent my adult life handling dogs at dog shows as well as breeding dogs. Good boy. How's the puppy doing? Since my retirement, I've become an avid deer farmer for the last 12 years, and that's pretty much my passion. I've been a hunter all my life, and I've always tried to manage whitetails, and I'd lease land with a bunch of my friends and came to the conclusion that if it wasn't high fence, you couldn't keep your big youngsters in or inferior deer out. So that really got me interested in trying to breed whitetails myself. And it's been a real pleasure.
If you've got a big deer farm, odds are you've got some help that works for you on this farm. There's a fellow that works here named Eric, and his wife Amy also. They live right here on the farm and they work together on the farm, and Amy is very involved in bottle raising of these doe fawns. But the thing is, if you're a deer farmer, you wind up going to these shows like the NADIFA show. Jim Moses at Dakota Whitetails is going to have a booth. And more than likely, Jim is going to be somewhere else, not in his booth, because he's yakking with everybody like I am. But the guy that you're going to find in the booth is Eric. And Eric knows probably more about the deer than Jim does. And the reason why is Eric spends 24/7. He's here 365 days a year. He knows these deer inside and out. And so if you come on a farm tour, odds are you're going to wind up not just going with Jim, but probably with Eric too. The Deer Farming Channel is brought to you in part by New Dart, leading the industry in accuracy. Hello, guys. What are y'all doing? Morning. Good morning. No, it's coffee. It's not milk. It's coffee. Don't you bite my finger. Bottle feeding fawns, you start out, most guys do 3 a day. In other words, once every 8 hours. They're just like little babies. And so for about a month, you hit them with 3 times a day. And then after that, you can hit them 2 times a day. And you give them some feed to where they start eating normal pellets. And then after another 30 days, you wind up hitting them 1 time a day and just basically wean them off, give them more and more feed. Currently they have feed and water, and they start nibbling on that during the day, but you wean them at about 90 days. The fawn barn here is pretty elaborate. It's big, and it has individual stalls. They're all numbered. What happens is after a baby is born, the fawns will stay on their mama for a day or 2 to get good colostrum. Once they get good colostrum, they'll pull them out, and then every one of the fawns goes in its own individual stall. And it stays in here for about 2 weeks. When you bottle feed a newborn baby, you have to stimulate them to pee and poop. They don't know how to do that. Their mama in the wild stimulates them to pee and poop. And so after about 2 weeks, when they understand that once they get fed, they pee and they poop, then all of a sudden they take them and they can take them out of the individual stalls and put them together where they can bottle feed them all together. I cannot get over how green everything is. Have y'all had a lot of rain?
Yeah, all year long. We've had rain, the most rain we've had at this time of year.
And your pens are so big. I look at it and I think, I want to talk about your 1-year-olds. I mean, we have seen lots of 1-year-olds. And the one thing that I notice in every 1-year-old pen, I know the reason why you've got an older deer in there with them, but it's, you've got, what, those are 3-year-olds that are in there?
Sir. Yeah.
So you've got 1 3-year-old in every single one of the yearling pens. Explain to everybody why you have them like that.
Well, as they start to polish up and the testosterone gets going in them and they want to start getting feisty, that older buck with the bigger rack and bigger body, he calms everybody down, and you end up with a lot less fights with the yearling bucks.
Well, the deer are such social animals, and I mean, you can see when one goes somewhere, they all go somewhere. Sure. And so what'll happen, like you're saying, it's like the 2 different species, really, when all of a sudden the antlers change and the testosterone comes in. I mean, they'll start getting aggressive, and that's when the pecking order really starts changing up. Yep. But I look at it and I think, in looking at your yearlings, you've got a lot of them out here. I mean, they're really good, pretty typical frame deer.
Yeah, well, we breed for big frames first and then try to get a score on them second. It's a hard thing to do, to get the blood flow and keep them typical, but you know, that's what the majority of true deer people really want. Is they don't want the highest scoring deer, they want big, beautiful deer. I
think that's an important thing to point out too. You know, a lot of people will say, well, what's he score? You know, when they talk to a hunter, what's he score? Anymore, it's in the deer industry now, we're going off of what does he look like?
The first word you ask.
Yeah, what does he look like? And so what we're looking at here, these yearlings, and all the yearlings that we've been looking at, are really pretty yearlings. Now let me ask you this, as far as your opinion goes on yearling deer, when do you make a decision whether you want to keep him in your program or not? And what I'm getting at is that some of these yearling deer you look at are exceptional. I mean, look at these guys. But some of them just aren't like that. But at year 2, that one that isn't good, like say one of those out there, he may blow up because they've all got great genetics. So what's your opinion on that?
Wow, the biggest yearlings are usually the biggest 2-year-olds, not maybe the biggest in the pen. Very few go backwards, but there's so many of these youngsters that maybe are 4x4 that score 140 inches. They can sure shock you if they've had any setback or born really late and missed the first cycle and got bred the second time around. They'll end up being just beautiful, and as 3-year-olds, they can really be monster, beautiful, typical deer.
If somebody out there wants to get in the deer industry, or you're in the deer industry and you have not come out here, you need to come to Eastern Ohio and take a look at this, because I think they're going to be blown away.
Thank you. Actually, some of the better breeders felt sorry for some of the bucks in Sun Dragon's pen. He said on anybody else's farm, they'd be monster breeders, and they looked insignificant next to him. So
yeah.
It was their misfortune.
Well, we'll see Sun Dragon here in a little bit, I'm sure, but right now, I am just extremely impressed with your 1-year-olds. They're beautiful.
Well, thank you.
The Deer Farming Channel is brought to you in part by Record Rack Deer and Elk Feeds. Okay, so these are 3-year-olds?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've seen a number of 3-year-olds today, and I've got a question to ask. When these guys were 1, how did these guys look compared to the yearlings that we just looked at?
Not as good. No, each year, each generation, they just get bigger frames. We keep breeding for the biggest frames we can put on them, and then just add some stickers and drops to make them good looking. But the frame is the most important thing. And each year our yearlings get bigger frames. Our 2-year-olds are bigger than the 2-year-olds before.
Now, as far as selling deer, okay, what age do you sell these deer?
You know, I usually keep my young deer and don't sell them young, but the youngest is usually 3.
Okay.
I sell does younger, depending on their breeding, but you know, if a place isn't high fenced, and have enough acreage, what happens is under all the different state departments, Fish and Game, even it encourages you to shoot the best young deer because they have racks. So you end up breeding with a gene pool, decreasing them smaller and smaller to where pretty much adult deer have 2 or 3 points per side if you're lucky.
I find it amazing how guys that are into whitetails can see the quality of whitetail deer really is going up across the country because more knowledge is being gained on how we grow bigger deer, and it's age, nutrition, and genetics. But out of those 3 things, age, nutrition, and genetics, I want you to, we haven't talked about this, talk about the most important thing out of those 3 things. What is it?
To me, it's nutrition, number 1, and absolutely genetics and age.
You've got to feed them the right groceries, okay? But they've got to have the right age too. If you shoot them early, they're not going to have a chance to spread those genetics out. And what do we say? Genetics. They've got to have the right genes. And so the way I look at it is that it's a 3-legged stool: age, nutrition, and genetics. And what's exciting to me is looking at these 3-year-olds out here. I'm going, if these guys, they're all beautiful deer, really, really pretty. If they weren't as good as your 1-year-olds now, what are those guys going to look like 2 years from now? Well, you've done a heck of a job.
Every year I get amazed. Every year.
And so on your website, have you got more information about if somebody wants to come out here and book a farm tour with you, how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Our phone numbers and all of our information is right on there.
Okay, good. So folks, if y'all want to come out here, this is in Eastern Ohio. We're about, I guess an hour and a half away from the Columbus airport. And probably only about 25, 30 minutes away from Pennsylvania. It's a beautiful rolling hills. And how many pens do you have total?
About 60.
And how many deer?
400 to 500.
400 to 500. Give or take 100.
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
But he's got some great genetics, and he's got some really nice deer. So come out here. I would highly recommend do so, and bring your family. Okay, if you've got a wife, bring her. You got a girlfriend, bring her. Because when they come out here and they wind up seeing the operation, they see everything from the big deer like what you're looking at right here to the does and of course the fawns. I mean, it's hard not to fall in love with a deer farm. This is beautiful. Okay, we've been holding off and holding off. You got to take me to see Sundragon.
okay, we'll do it.
All right.
The Deer Farming Channel is brought to you in part by New Dart, leading the industry in accuracy.
All right, so this is a pen of 2-year-olds in? Boy, they're good looking. Look who's coming. That's got to be Sundragon.
Oh, yeah.
Holy smokes. Now, how wide is he, do you think? Golly.
A little over 40 inches inside, and he was 59 and 5/8 outside. He just missed being 5 foot wide by 3/8 of an inch.
My gosh, what do we have here? Somebody poking at me.
Yeah, we've
Must
got
be
a
deer
doe
on the
in the
backside. Okay, but no, I sit here and I look at Sundragon. I'm thinking, now he's huge, and there's no doubt. I mean, he's got that look that he laid out like that. But he's how old now?
6 now.
Okay, so he's going backwards now because
Just
I know
a
a couple of years ago, you had a video that was throughout the industry that blew everybody's mind.
Yeah, that was last year at 5. He was a monster.
He was unbelievable. I mean, but look at him. He looks. He's the same shape. I mean,
he has this big frame yet. He won't score quite as much. He He scored 558 inches last year.
My goodness, but again,
He'll score a little less, but he still has a huge frame.
yeah, who cares what he scores? Just
Yeah.
look. I mean, look at the look. I mean, he's just got the frame.
Yeah.
But these other guys in here with him are two.
And that green 51 is his 2-year-old son, and we're real proud of him too. He's going to have a huge frame and really long up tines.
Wow. And so
He
as
has
far
a
as
couple other sons in his pen too that are big frames.
and they're out of him.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's breeders throughout the industry that have now, I mean, when you released that video last year, it blew everybody's mind, and people started breeding with him like crazy. But you've been breeding with him, and I want to point out that a lot of guys that have got big deer wind up writing a check and just buy them, okay? That deer right there, Sun Dragon, didn't get bought. He got made. He was born right here.
Right.
His mama was born right here, and Jim Moses has got it going on right here because he's producing deer like Sun Dragon and all these other deer that we've been showing you. But this is unbelievable. So as far as, let me ask you, what's going to happen to Sun Dragon? I mean, you're just going to keep him. I mean, he's a franchise player for your farm.
No, he'll die here. Of natural causes, I promise you.
I mean, that deer right there, and no matter how old he gets and no matter how decrepit he gets, still genetically, you can tell that deer has got what it takes to be a monster. Now you can tell how come he's called a franchise deer.
Right.
That really, truly is a beautiful deer, Jim.
Well, thank you.
Something else that I'm noticing here too, I look at the way that you're feeding deer. These feed troughs, the way that you see them eating right here, there's not a kernel of grain that goes uneaten. They all have plenty of room to come in and eat. There's not one going to dominate a feeder, even though Sun Dragon's right over there chowing down. They're not going to dominate a feeder. Everybody gets something to eat, but you can monitor how much feed that you're putting in these troughs, how much they're eating, and every day you get a good close look at them to see.
Check their health.
Yep. So folks, if y'all want more information to get a hold of Jim Moses, just log on to his website. Jim, these are beautiful deer.
Thank you. Thank you much.
You know, coming here to Ohio is a real blessing. The weather's nice, the country is beautiful, and yes, they have some giant deer. I appreciate you watching today's program, and if you have any questions or comments at all, please get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you, and I promise you, if you spend the time to get in touch with me, I'll spend the time to respond to you. I'm Keith Warren, and thank you for watching Deer and Wildlife Stories. What you're about to see is graphic in nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Last August, many of Texas's deer farmers were forced to kill hundreds of perfectly healthy deer in order to test them for chronic wasting disease. To date, approximately 600 deer have been killed, and the killing isn't over. What's worse is that out of all the deer that were killed, not a single one of them tested positive for chronic wasting disease. I don't know about you, but to me there's just something wrong with the picture when you start killing perfectly healthy deer to test them to make sure they're not sick with chronic wasting disease. Now, CWD has been around for over 50 years, and I'm a believer that CWD, it needs to be managed from science-based management rather than from a political agenda. And I think that we ought to learn from states that have been battling CWD for more than 50 years, and they themselves say that there's nothing they can do to manage it. What they need to do is just monitor it. So again, I think that we ought to base our CWD stuff all on science and not on a political agenda. If you'd like to find out more about chronic wasting disease, let me encourage you to go to the website cwdmyths.com.